So this morning I'm going to talk a little bit about community. I'm going to talk a little bit about our community. I'm going to talk a little bit about other communities. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of our community. And specifically kind of building a community. Places kind of have a sense, end up being synonymous with a thing a lot, if you will. New York is kind of synonymous with the financial services world. You know, you've got the stock market, you've got trading. People think about New York, and a lot of people think about, finance and financial services. People think about Detroit, think about automobiles. You can say what you will for the downturn of maybe production of some of those automobiles in Detroit, but it's still, the heartbeat and the soul of the global automotive space is Detroit. And then people think about creativity. People think about technology, people think about art, and a lot of people think about this place. People think about Silicon Valley. Now, I think Silicon Valley is unquestionably, in the world of business, a place that is looked at as a creative global leader, but that really wasn't always the case. So tell a little story about Bill. This is Bill. Bill Shockley was a guy who was from a little town on the West Coast, and at the time where Bill was growing up, the creative heartbeat of the technology world was the East Coast. It was around New York, it was around New Jersey, and Bill worked at a little place called Bell Labs. Bell Labs was one of the was a really unique place where there was a ton of fundamental research done that was part of the Bell AT&T world. And while Bill was there, he worked on a little widget you see right here called a transistor. Bill was working to try to amplify and move long-distance telephone calls more effectively, and he and a group of guys invented this thing called the transistor. And the transistor became a really big deal. It was really this monumental kind of world-shaking moment in technology, and it became the soul of telephones. It became the soul of computers. It became the thing that hosts all of the software and all the devices that we use. Transistors are what kind of makes semiconductors and processors work. It was a really, really huge deal. So the way that Bell Labs kind of worked at the time, there was AT&T had a monopoly on the phone system. AT&T, Bell had this monopoly. And that sounds like kind of an anti-capitalistic thing to do, maybe not such an American thing to do, but at the time people were kind of looking at the electrical infrastructure. Right now, because the electrical infrastructure kind of popped up in these little pods all over the country, you can't really send an electron from North Dakota to Colorado. Like, you can't do that. Not because of loss or physics, but the two don't connect. So if you have a bunch of wind power, let's say, like an abundance of wind power, and you want to get that power to places where it's being produced by coal or something else, you really can't do that. Because there's these little pockets, and the electricity can only move so far into these pockets, and there's kind of nowhere for it to go. So people were seeing some of that stuff emerge, and they're saying, you know what, the phone system can't work that way. We got to get a phone call from San Francisco to New York, from Tallahassee to Seattle, and we can't have it go through this wonky network thing. We need something that connects seamlessly. So people said, it's going to be okay. We can have a monopoly, but if we're going to do this, then all of the technology that you invent needs to become public domain, more or less. You have to make all of the things you invent in this laboratory to make our phone system better available to the broader public. So they did a bunch of cool stuff. Bell Labs invented the photovoltaic cells, solar cells. They invented the transistor. They invented most of the modern network switching equipment that's used in the world. They did a bunch of really cool stuff. So Bill had worked with a group of people and invented this transistor. He said, this is going to be a big deal. So Bill said, I think I can make a business out of this thing. I'm going to leave Bell Labs, and I have the right to use this technology, and I'm going to move home. This is home for Bill. Mountain View, California. And I'm going to get some of the brightest guys that I know from this Bell organization, and we're going to build an amazing business out of this transistor. So here's downtown Mountain View, California, about the time Bill made a move. And this now looks pretty different. Plunk, the headquarters of Facebook, and SaaS businesses and Intel kind of right on top of this. The landscape has changed a lot in Mountain View, California. But this was Mountain View, California at the time in which Bill moved out there and he started this little organization called Shockley Semiconductor. And he reached out to all of his really bright friends and he said, have I got an opportunity for you? We're going to change the world. Come move out to Mountain View with me, where the strawberry fields and the guys are picking stuff and there's a little downtown. And we're going to change the world with this great new business. And they were living, you know, in the broader kind of New York metropolitan area, New Jersey at the time, Boston. They went, here, right? You want me to leave here, right? No, not so much. So Bill got more or less nobody that he was looking for. So then he kind of, you know, he started scrounging around. He started going to local universities, and he found these guys, you know, not, you know, people recognized as, you know, the absolute best and brightest of the, you know, technology minds. It was a bunch of people that were just finishing their PhDs, just coming out of grad school, you know, maybe been in industry for a little bit. You know, a bunch of people basically new, you know, to this space, and Bill there, and these guys believed, and they didn't really necessarily care where they were or believed that being in Mountain View was a barrier for them being successful. And so they started this business, Shockley Semiconductor. Now Bill, great technologist, amazing technologist, terrible boss. Nobody really liked working for Bill. People could see that Bill wasn't really going to get this thing across the finish line. So these 8 guys, who became known as the Traitorous 8, left Shockley Semiconductor and started a new business. Now they'd come to know this guy, Sherman Fairchild. And Sherman was a very, very wealthy playboy from New York. I know he maybe doesn't strike you as playboy. But in his time, Sherman was a real party animal. Sherman, you know, would kind of hit these new different lady on his arm every day. And these 2 dudes, Bill Noyce and Gordon Moore, they really captured, you know, Sherman's imagination. They got him so excited about what the future of these semiconductor things, these transistors could do. He was not a technologist. He was a guy who had access to capital. And this is before the days of like venture capital. And they got Sherman really excited about this. And so he started this little thing, Fairchild Semiconductor. And he got these 2 guys moving along. Now Fairchild Semiconductor grew explosively under the guidance of Bill Noyce and Gordon Moore. And from the 12 years from when it started, from 59 to 71, Fairchild Semiconductor spawned 31 spinoff companies. People that started in the business, people that were part of the original 8 that saw little directions these technologies could go. And so, you know, Sherman Fairchild, Gordon, and Bill dropped this, you know, rock in the pond, and it rippled this technology sort of explosion. If you extrapolate this thing out another 30 years, the map looks crazy. You know, and you know, Gordon and Bill, for example, ultimately left Fairchild after Fairchild had grown for a while and started a little company called Intel. You know, so this thing became an absolute monster and drove, you know, the guys picking strawberries in the field in Mountain View, California, to be what is unquestionably the technology heartbeat of the world. And so the lesson that a person can take from all of this stuff is great companies can and absolutely unquestionably will. Great organizations can and absolutely unquestionably will. Great creative organizations can and unquestionably will start in what looks like super unlikely places. So this is Fargo, right? Now, I think in the world of like creativity and in the world of business, one of our cultural shortcomings in the Midwest, maybe generally, but especially in the upper Midwest, is we're not big like toot your own horn people. We don't get out there, we say, you know, we're great because of all these reasons. We're pretty modest people. And I don't necessarily believe that people recognize some of the amazing things that are already been done in this community today. So a couple examples. So there was a couple guys near Rothsay, Minnesota, the Keller brothers, and they had a neighbor who raised turkeys, and he was having a real hard time cleaning out his turkey barn. So these guys worked with him a little bit, made a little machine, and found a friend out by Gwinner, North Dakota that could help them market and sell it, a guy named Les Melro. And they started a little business over the course of a couple years that became Bobcat. And This was the jump-off point for creating a $5 billion compact construction equipment, business that for a long time, and still to some degree today, is really, headquartered here. If you think about the compact and construction and agricultural equipment business, 3 of the 5 largest dealers of those businesses are headquartered in Fargo on a global basis. One of the largest manufacturers of compact equipment is headquartered here. Many of the electronics are developed here. And a lot of the really high horsepower equipment's built here. This became a global hub of the production of these machines and the sale of these machines, because a couple guys near Rothsay had a neighbor who was having a hard time getting stuff out of a turkey barn. And as part of that, not far from Red Lake Falls, there's these 2 brothers, Steiger brothers, and they were having a hard time pulling bigger and bigger plows through kind of heavier and heavier soil. So they went ahead and built themselves, as we do, their own 4-wheel drive tractor. Went out, got themselves a transmission and engine, started cutting stuff and welding it, built themselves a 4-wheel drive tractor. That 4-wheel drive tractor became, Steiger Tractor Corporation became a 100,000 square foot, production facility making, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment every year here in Fargo. So the message here is that great companies with great impact, great organizations with great impact have already developed in our community. I think sometimes, there's this impression when you think about a community like looking toward the future and trying to grasp some really bright new dream of the future that we are starting from this like standing start. We're gotta get moving. We have a lot of momentum. This community is growing incredibly and doing incredible things and has been doing that for the last couple of decades. We don't have to move from a standing start. We are already moving. So in a similar system, you look at that Bobcat company that started. People left that business and started Steiger Tractor. People left that business, started what became John Deere Electronic Solutions. People left that business, started my business, started Apario. Our business has spawned 4 more businesses. So this explosion is kind of already moving in one direction, and it doesn't only have to be one explosion. It doesn't only have to be one thing. This exact same phenomena can repeat itself. And the message is that a few entrepreneurs, a few people can have a really, really substantial impact. We don't need an army of people looking to make a change. We need a few motivated people with a dream. A few motivated people with a dream turned a bunch of strawberry fields in Mountain View, California into Silicon Valley. A few motivated people with a dream spawned the $5 billion compact construction equipment business and market right here in our community. A few people with a dream here in Fargo can make a really, really substantial impact. And we have this framework of success already that leaders in Fargo can build on. If you're trying to start a nonprofit organization, if you're trying to start a technology organization, if you're trying to get something moving, we have a framework built here already that people can use. This stuff is already moving in the right direction. So for me, this is where I grew up. And this was my introduction to the entrepreneurial world. It's right down here in this little room. While I lived here, my father started 3 businesses, and I watched those businesses go up and grow. And I was kind of raised in and amongst the businesses. I mowed the lawn at the business. I was the lawn care guy. I mean, I was running around on the production floor picking up wire. I was involved in kind of steeped in entrepreneurial business. And then the business he started when I was 5, Phoenix International, became John Deere Electronic Solutions, which became a fairly substantial organization here, in Fargo. Then along the way here, we moved not too far away, and I watched another entrepreneurial organization get started. This time while I was at college, came home and would see it going on in the basement, going on in the garage, and then when I left college, got into that organization. There's me, very, very impressive looking haircut up in the top of the corner. And the 5 of us, we got underway, building a business called Apario, which has been tremendous in its success. As Jeff was talking about earlier, we've gone from a couple college kids in that research park office to a couple hundred people, and we are growing really, really dramatically. And for me, I have a dream for our business where I think we can make the next level impact, where I think we can do some really, really substantial things in the world. And still, because my mom was grew up on a farm, I spent a lot of time growing up on the farm. I'm close to agriculture. And we're an agrarian community, and so production of food and fiber is a big deal to me. I really feel it. It's something I'm tremendously passionate about, and it's a challenge. We have a big sort of global and industrial challenge to tackle, and I'm excited about that challenge. There's going to be 9.7 billion people in the world in the next 30 years. That's a couple extra billion people, and one of you can talk about how different people are, right? People's races, ethnicities, religions. There's this thread that connects all people, and it's that all people eat. Universally, those 2 billion people, they're going to want to eat, and the people in developing countries want to eat differently. They want more protein. They're enriching their diets. People's diets are changing, and all of that stuff kind of stresses agriculture, because we're asking for people to make 69% more calories with less land, less chemical, less fertilizer. We're trying to be much more ecologically friendly. Urban sprawl is consuming land. And so we have, as an agricultural community, a real technology challenge. It's going to end up changing the way that food and fiber production works. The paradigm of a bunch of people working in the field, out there, turning dirt over, planting, harvesting, that's going to change. And the paradigm's going to be one of robotic equipment, automated equipment, people managing fleets of, autonomous and semi-autonomous equipment that is, collecting, and planting and distributing and husbanding, all of these different planting and harvesting activities. And so for me, when I think about the future of our business and I think about the future of our community, I believe that we, have a right to be, the global leader in, what will be this future of autonomous and robotic, field equipment. I believe that this part of the world has dramatically changed the way that people farm and grow food and fiber. And I think that it has a right to continue to be and further kind of its position as a leader. And I want to be a big part of that. I want to lead that change. And so that gets me up, that gets me moving every single day. And I think about building our community, and I think about the rash of businesses and needs that could spin around this space, and I get up for that. I get really excited for that. But that's not to say, that that's the kind of the end all be all of our community. Because in the context of building a community, one of the great things about our community is that it isn't just one thing. Our community is many things, many different kinds of businesses, and that diversity gives us tremendous strength. And I think one of the things that prevents people from moving in a direction of creation of something, is a fear, kind of failure, a fear of the drop. Nobody wants to jump in, right? Because it's scary to kind of look down and do something, of substantial significance. And so for me, to talk about creativity and talk about the community, for me, I'm about creation of technology and businesses, and I'm very, very much wired to think that way. But regardless of what a person wants to create, I think what's important is that you come into it with an idea of doing something of real significance. Whatever significance is kind of in the context of, your nonprofit, in the context of your business, in the context of your space, and making that big reach. And I think a lot of the things that have prevented us from doing that is this feeling that, we can't. And you shouldn't feel that way at all. If a strawberry field in Mountain View, California can turn into Silicon Valley, there's absolutely no reason that you can't do anything in Fargo. So that's what I've got for you. And now there's a Q&A, right, Dana?